second. I know there was lots of people that wanted to learn about this subject. So I think it's an important one. We're all at home. I don't like to say stuck at home, but in Nova Scotia, we're stuck at home. So I think it's an important subject. And, you know, we're doing everything online. Like even the grocery stores, I got a coupon from Sobeys yesterday in the mail, $25 off your first $100 order curbside pickup. Like
what a tremendous value.
They're trying to get people to buy online, right? So you're going to go on there, you're going to set up a username and a password, and you're going to set up an account with them. And there's another vulnerable,
another attack vector.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So before we get started, and before you introduce yourself, I got to tell you a story. Okay. This is not my area of expertise, and I'm learning over the last month, but I got to tell you a story about vulnerability, and maybe lots of people in the group will appreciate it. But for the last 10 years, I've been marketing a product called Matcha. Okay. And I was my main focus for a decade. And it's like green tea matcha, MATCHA. My password, you can ask anyone in my family. I know my kids will probably be watching this, but I always use Matcha 001, capital M 001, Matcha 2017, 2018, 2019. And with all my passwords for a decade had that one word in it, whether it was capitalized or lowercase, and it always had like the date after it or 001. And when I went through and I did some of the things that you're going to kind of share with us just last month, and I was like, holy crap. And I had all these passwords stored in my browser, and I downloaded into an Excel, and I looked down, it was like it was crazy. Like, talk about vulnerable. All you had to do was guess. My email, my banking, pretty much every online account I had that one. Netflix, Amazon, so I don't know if anybody watching this is going to be able to relate to that story, but I use it like more than a decade, and some of those passwords have never been changed.
Yeah, it's a real risk, and that's a common story. And before I was in the world of cybersecurity, I was guilty of that as well. And I just didn't understand the risk. But any account that has your your credit card information, like that's a little juicy bit that the hackers want to go and get,
And then when they asked me, it would come up every once in a while, maybe say you got to change it and you can't reuse that again. I would use Doug Collins 001, Doug Collins 2021. It was like there's no guessing to what I was doing, or there was no secret to what I was doing, right? So.
No. And what you can do too, there's a website that you can visit, and it's safe. Okay. It's recognized in the industry, and it's Have I Been Pwned? Have, HAVEI, the letter I, Been, BEEN, Pwned, PWNED.com.
So we'll put that in the comments here.
Yeah, and what you can do is you can go and put in your email address or addresses and your cell number, and you can find out if there are any instances of any of your credentials having been hacked that are compromised.
I had 21. I had 21 on one email address. Is that a lot?
That's quite a few. And so then what the hackers do, well, this guy used this email visit password for this account. What are the chances he's used it for other accounts? Pretty good.
Yeah. It was really a matter of time for me, right?
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
It was just,
Look, there's so many people that have their credentials exposed. There's not enough time for the hackers to get at them all.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of time. It is scary. And, anything that has a credit card, very, very vulnerable. One of the most recent attacks that I heard of that I thought, well, that's pretty genius, and right around tax time, they get your credentials, they file your tax return on your behalf. How lovely of them. And get the return sent to them.
Yeah, because they can set up direct deposit to any account, and it just goes through. If they beat you to the game, right?
That's right, exactly. And I know I'm a procrastinator at tax time. Yeah. I get it filed at the deadline, not before. So they would have had all kinds of time to get it in before me. Yeah, definitely.
Wow,
So there's
I never thought of
motivation
that. So I never thought of that.
There's motivation that you can share to tell people to get their returns done early.
Well, yeah, absolutely, right, absolutely. So I put the link in the comments because I've seen a couple of people are asking what that link was again. So Angela, let's back up a little bit. We kind of jumped right in, sure. And let's tell us who you are, tell us where you're at, tell us how you got into cybersecurity. Let's just kind of set this up and we'll have a conversation from there.
Sure. So like I had said, Doug, you know, I don't fancy myself as a cybersecurity expert. I'm not. I'm a layperson. My strength is more in sales and conversation. And I had a conversation with a good friend in the fall, and she's running a cybersecurity company. You know, she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm retired. I'm having fun, but maybe I'm a little bit bored." And she said, "Well, let me tell you what I've been up to. You know, we have a company, we have some really unique technology. There's massive demand. Cybercrime is on the rise. Small and medium-sized business are very much at risk. And we could use some help spreading our message." And I was hooked. I was like, I get to help the small guy protect themselves by doing what I like to do, learn about technology, talk to people. And I haven't looked back. It's been fabulous, very interesting. The things that I learn every day are absolutely mind-boggling. You know, I was following a story just recently about Tesla with their autonomous driving vehicles. And before my entry into this world, I was just fascinated with the idea of autonomous driving cars because it can really revolutionize rural living, especially for seniors, right? Yeah. You know, a senior can stay in their home for a really long time until they can't drive anymore, right? And like, this is the best thing in the world. But now, like, not such a great idea because it's an attack vector. And they recently had an experiment where a car was hacked by the use of a drone. So, unfortunately, this exercise was part of what's called a bug bounty. And this is where companies say, we want you to try and hack into us. And if you succeed, we're going to pay you money so we can learn where our vulnerabilities are. And that's what Tesla had in place for this particular attack. So the scope of the attacks, the number of things that can be attacked, the sophistication, like, you know, gone are the days where it's some teenager in mom and dad's basement. That is not the face of a hacker today. We're talking about buildings full of professional, educated people. It's a white collar job in many countries. You know, state-sponsored attacks against companies, against other nation states, team efforts, highly educated people.
You're scaring me.
It's reality, right? And so let's take this to the small and medium-sized business. They're the low-hanging fruit. They have the least barrier to being attacked by a hacker. So there might not be as great a reward for hacking a small individual, but it's pretty easy. It's like taking candy from a baby. And so you just add them up and it's worth the hacker's time to do it. And so that's why the smaller, medium-sized business and the solopreneur, they need to do everything that they can to protect themselves.
So if you went into that website link, have you been pawned? And let's say I had 21 vulnerabilities or whatever you call it. Like, what does that mean? Like, I see Elsie said she had 3. Like, what does that mean to us as individuals? Like, where are those 3 for Elsie sitting? Like, is it in a data file that all these criminals get access to and they sell it back and forth? How does that work?
That's exactly what it is. That's a great question. So this is now data that's available for sale on the dark web. So you can access a whole other part of the internet through torrents. And it's not something that I've done or I'm knowledgeable about in detail, but in general, just to know that it exists. And it's a forum where hackers collaborate, where they share, where they buy services, or where they buy data. So you might have a hacker who doesn't really want to get their hands too dirty. You know, they got a database of information and they don't really want to do anything with it. For them, you know, the thrill of the hunt, they've got it. But now they're going to take that and they're going to sell it. And then the next level of criminal will get their hands on it and they'll say, okay, what can I do with that?
So if I've been pawned 21 times, my username and my password is sitting out there, maybe multiple places within this dark world, just waiting for somebody to do a data mining and say, oh, let's go see what this guy's at. Let's go find his accounts.
Yes, or a social engineering attack, anything of that nature. And so, you know, any of those accounts, absolutely essential that you get those passwords updated and changed immediately. Like, just don't even delay for an afternoon, get it done. Yeah, so, you know, if you can, that kind of leads into maybe some discussion around passwords and password hygiene. You know, it's boring. It's maybe the broccoli of the cybersecurity conversation, but it's the most important thing because that's the primary attack vector, is breaking into accounts. So like a brute force attack on a password is something where the hacker can use software tools to guess, you know, what your password is. They don't have to have it. And if your password is 8 characters or less, it's like instantaneous. They have access to your account. All they need is your email address to go to your website and log in. Boom, they're in, whatever accounts you have. So password length is really, really important. So 12 characters or longer is a good rule of thumb, and more complex is better. So you can add like mixed upper and lower case, or you can add digits, or you could add special characters. And all of that adds to how attackable or breakable a password is. So 12 characters is a really good rule of thumb. It doesn't necessarily have to include all those special characters, but it does just make it better, tighter. And then a different password for every single account. So, and especially like your banking or something like that, right? It's an absolute must.
Mike, so I have 2 questions that come out of this then is saving your password in your browser. You know, it always comes up, would you like to save it? Because if I'm going to have a different password and it's going to be 12 characters, I'm never going to remember it, right? So it's that, like, talk to me about, is that vulnerable? Like, is it really safe? And Google stores it and all that kind of stuff. The other part is I set up 1Password. And again, it was a huge learning curve. I think I spent a better part of a day on it. So, you know, talk about maybe that as sort of the 2 comparisons, because what I always did was just, you want to save it? And I said, yeah. And I just saved it in my browser. Like,
yeah. So those tools are not safe. Sadly, they just aren't. I won't get into the details. So where are you left, right? If you're not going to use your browser as a password manager, there's third-party password managers that you can use. One that is recommended is called Bitwarden, and the other one is LastPass. And there are many, many others, but those are 2 of the most highly recommended password managers. I think LastPass was free for a while, and now they've changed their model, and there might be a small fee. The other option, I'm old school. I have them in a notebook, so it cannot be hacked, but it can be stolen. So if someone were to break into my home, it's a risk. But everything that you do is a risk. And for me, I've just decided that's the risk that I want to take. And it's time consuming. It's annoying. I got to write it down, replace pieces of paper. It's not the best way to do it. It's slow. But a password manager, what that will let you do, and this is something that might be really relevant for a lot of your members of your group, Doug, is it can let them share accounts where they want other people to have access. So maybe they're sharing a paid Canva account or something of that nature. And their assistant can have access to their account, but they'll never have the password. So a password manager allows sharing of protected data that way. And so they're a really, really good idea. They're well worth the small amount of money you might pay a month. It could be in the neighborhood of like $5 a month or something like that. It's well worth it.
Like in that site that Have You Been Pawned, they referred to 1Password. And I did some research on that. I don't know. I think it's been like $30 or $40 or so for a year, right? So
yeah.
and locked everything down. It was a bit of a learning curve, but it's up and running. It's easy to use now.
For sure, exactly. And then the other thing to set up too is multi-factor authentication. So any account that offers that service, you should have it. And that'll just you'll install like a third-party app on your cell phone. And with your cell phone or with your password, you'll also need to enter into a unique random generated number every time you're accessing an account. Royal pain in the butt, because we're so used to like, hey, what's that password I use all the time? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom, I'm in. And now it's like, oh, what's the password? I don't remember it. I either got to look it up, or if you're using a password manager, you got to set it up. And now I got to go grab my phone. So every time I want to log into something, I have to have my phone beside me, open up that app on my phone, grab the number, type it in. But what's better, right? What's better, being at risk or, taking those steps? It's a new world, and these are new things that we have to do.
Especially, if you're running a business, like, if you're that vulnerable, and you could be out of business, right? And somebody could steal everything from you, and I'm just, you wake up one morning, you're a nobody. Kind of like, we're so vulnerable.
Yes, and it's not just yourself too. So you have your clients. You owe a duty of care to your customers. How would you feel if their critical data was compromised because you weren't following basic protocols? So, that's very, very devastating. It's so hard to build up a clientele, build up your good name, start getting referral business, and then have something like this happen. It's devastating. Yeah. So you definitely have that duty of care to your clients, and in turn to theirs. It's like a domino effect, right? Once one domino falls, it's a chain reaction and cascade, and then it can just keep rolling, right? So
absolutely, never thought of that.
Put the kibosh.
So Elsie just asked a question. She said, "What if you store it on your phone, like in notes?"
Phones are really, really a dangerous attack vector. Not a good idea. Elsie, I appreciate the thought. It's a nice little shortcut, but it's a dangerous way to go. And that brings up maybe the topic too of public Wi-Fi. Yeah. You're on your cell phone. You're at Walmart. It's like an honor system when you go into these public Wi-Fi spaces, because everybody else who is on that public Wi-Fi can see your device. And so think about those passwords in your little notepad app on your cell phone.
So we might not know how to get into Elsie's device, but somebody at Walmart might be sitting down at McDonald's with a laptop, and they know they know, oh, they're so-and-so, I can get into that. They could be playing or sitting in the parking lot, really.
That the people who are up to no good definitely can do that. They could easily be in the parking lot. You would never even know. Yeah. So Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi, just consider it like getting into a swimming pool where somebody peed in it.
So on that note, like those wireless doorbells, I got Alexa here. Like, can people hack into that? Like or is it based on my Wi-Fi security? Like,
sure. So this is all around the IoT, Internet of Things. So now, we think in our wisdom, we need to have our refrigerator connected to the internet, because when we're in the driveway, we can change the temperature setting. I don't know. I'm sure there's better use cases for it, but these are the types of things, or programmable thermostats, all of this that's connected to the internet.
Front door unlocks or whatever.
Yeah. Now I didn't read the full details. But it was shared among our team about a week ago. There was a casino in Las Vegas that was attacked through a fish tank, an aquarium that had, these remote sensing devices on it that were all internet connected to control the temperature of the water and to keep it clean and all of that kind of stuff. And that was used to hack a casino. That's how they got in. So yes. All of these, like your smart home, all these devices, they are a risk for sure. And honestly, the security solutions around these things, it's a very immature offering for vendors. The products to protect you they're just getting started. They're not well developed yet. Yeah.
Wow. And we embrace them because of the convenience, but not never considering the risk.
That's right. Exactly. Because most of us, like that was me 8 months ago, completely clueless. I had no idea. And so this is why I was so happy that you're having this this conversation for your group. A lot of it is just about creating awareness, you know, because you can't protect yourself from a threat that you don't even know exists, or you think, oh, how bad can it be? You know, and that might have been true 10 years ago, but today it's advanced so much that the landscape is changed dramatically. Yeah. So, but there's a lot. Go ahead.
Talk to me about like fraud schemes, scams, account takeovers. Like I get like on Facebook, one this morning, you get the scanty clad fake picture of a woman, sends me a friend request. Like I know women talk about it all the time, but the guys get them too. Like, you know, and like, you know, I don't know if the intention is to get me to subscribe to some crazy site, or are they trying to get me to have a conversation to hack my account? Like what is that goes on out? Like Instagram is terrible for it.
It can be any number of things, and it all falls under the purview of social engineering. So when I talk about a cyber attack, I'm talking about maybe a bit of malicious software that's been implanted on your computer. But when we get into frauds and scams, they're using like the traditional old-fashioned way of, you know, reeling someone in, finding out what they can find out about them and using it against them, but they're using technology to do that. And so, you know, those types of things are not necessarily a quote cyber attack per se, but they're using technology to execute some kind of a fraud. And often it can be just as simple as information gathering. And when they get enough information that connects the dots to a bigger target, then it can be really valuable. And so a thing that occurred a couple years ago was something so innocent. And it was a very senior level engineer who shared that, no, I can't make it to mom and dad's cottage this weekend. I have to work. But that email was intercepted, and the people who knew who he was and who he worked for immediately knew that there was a really important activity about to take place at an oil drilling rig. Okay, because this was a person of interest, and they were surveilling the bigger company, looking for, you know, corporate intelligence, and they got it that way because of an innocent email to mom and dad.
Wow. And I, you know, I've heard stories in the past where people would go on vacation and, you know, doing the selfies on the beach in Jamaica and stuff, and their home's getting cleaned out because they know nobody's in town, right? So,
yeah.
You know,
so there's a podcast that I listen to that if, you know, any of your group members are so inclined and they want to entertain themselves and learn more, it's just fantastic. It's called The Darknet Diaries. And it's so incredibly well done. Like I'm a nerd, but so I like it. But now I've talked to other people who like, they're like, no, I'm not a nerd. And that is one awesome podcast. Okay. So they were citing an example where somebody showed a photo of their boarding pass as just like, woohoo, I'm on my way, you know, on vacation. And through that, they were able to get the person's passport credentials, because the boarding pass, the information that's on it, it's kind of like a username and login for the airline. And they were able to get in, and without too many, you know, like expert know-how, little tips and tricks. They weren't like some high-level hacker. It was pretty basic stuff that they figured out. They were able to get the person's passport information. And it was a political leader of the country in Australia.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh.
So yeah, anything that has information on it, don't share that. You just never know. You just never know. And you know, whenever like these phishing schemes too, right? So if ever someone is asking you to do something where there's urgency in the request, you know, or they're preying on an emotion like fear. Like if you don't, like someone got into your bank, you know, click this link, like right now, you know, right? You always have to second guess, where is this coming from, you know, or go at it through another route, you know, and use your mouse to hover over the link to reveal what the link is before you click on it. You know, these are all little things that you need to start thinking, like, is this the right, am I going to the place where I think I'm going to? Hover over the URL.
And that makes a lot of sense because, you know, I get emails or text messages, you know, you can tell they're random because it's like, you know, RBC, and I don't even deal with RBC. Like, you know what I mean? I think they're just mass blasting. They're going to get an RBC customer at some point.
That's right.
It's the law of averages, right? So they're just shooting it out randomly.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's it. Spray and pray. You know, they're using the same marketing techniques as everybody else. It's going to resonate with somebody, you know, or like your Amazon shipment is late. Well, how many of us are getting Amazon shipments today?
Yeah.
All of us, right? And so you just and if you're expecting one, you without even thinking, you just click on it because you are expecting one.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and so many tricks that they can use. One of the best ones that I learned within the last week, and I would have easily fallen for this one, and it shows the URL, and it could be like mybank.com, all right? And the letter A, instead of it being like the normal A that it's got the little rounded part and the little loop at the bottom, it's not that type of character. It's like the A that we made in grade school, where it's a big circle with the line on the side. That's the only difference in the URL. And the second one is the wrong one. And you wouldn't catch that. So that's a really valuable little one. But it's just, again, it's like, I don't want to scare people, but I do really want to impress upon people how careful you really have to start becoming when you're online, when you're downloading free software. Can we talk about that? Oh my gosh, please. There's no free software. If it's free, it's bundled with malware, you know, pretty much guaranteed. Or if it comes from a trusted vendor, it could be offered maybe by a third-party provider. That happens a lot. If it's offered by a third-party provider, chances are it has malware like mixed in with it. It's all bundled.
That would apply for apps on your phone.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of those are free. It always says there's sponsored ads and stuff in it. But so do you hear that, Elsie?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that makes your phone even more vulnerable. Like, I mean, all the apps are free, right?
Phone is such a vulnerable piece of technology, and you know, my area of knowledge, or my knowledge in that space is much lower than it is with, you know, the online and your desktop and all that kind of stuff. But it's certainly an area that it's such a great risk. And if you lose your phone, you know, like, you better have a password on your phone.
Or at home have a button where you can make your phone explode instantly, right? Just go get another one.
That's it. That's it. Exactly. Yeah. It's a little nutty. There was a couple other things too. I don't know if you wanted to go through them, Doug, in our little list of things we might talk about. Absolutely. I think we've exhausted the password.
We probably got everybody scared now. I mean, it's you know, and before we get into that, like, you know, it's, when I look at it, it's almost like when I have the taxes conversation with people, and they're like, oh my gosh, like this is just another area, cybersecurity it's just another thing that we really have to take responsibility. Nobody's going to come and bang on our door and say, Angela, I think you're vulnerable. Right?
That's a good point.
And nobody's going to knock on your door and say, Angela, I think you're missing tax write-offs. Oh, by the way, Mr. CRA or Miss CRA, I'm reviewing your tax return from the last 3 years, and I think you're paying too much. Like, nobody's going to do this. So, you know, this is why I wanted to bring you on and just say, like, you know, this is an area that I was vulnerable. I'm, you know, probably still vulnerable, but I've secured my passwords, right? And I can check the box there, and I'm still learning. And then, you know what I mean? Like, and just like some of the things that you're saying is, it scares me, but it's the world we live in. And I think now,
we live in now,
through COVID, we live in it even more, right? COVID has just accelerated this online thing beyond anything we've ever imagined.
The genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah.
And it's not going back in.
And the cyber criminals are going, man, I love COVID. This is awesome. Everybody's home. They're all creating accounts everywhere. And
Right. And I mean, one of the quick, things that I shared with you before we went live too is, and I heard this within the last week, the news outlet 60 Minutes has recently reported they believe that the greatest threat to the US economy is cyber attack right now. Like, when I heard that, I was like, that can't be right. With the pandemic and the amount of business shutdown we've experienced, that certainly has to be the biggest risk. Nope, cyber attack, biggest risk. Like, it's a whole new world. So if, you're at home, you're doing your work, you're doing your job, you're running your little small business, you're interacting with your customers, you have to have antivirus on your laptop. It's not optional. It is not optional.
So the one that comes with it, like with Microsoft, is that adequate, or do I got to go get a third party?
Yeah. 5 years ago, we used to say the Microsoft one that came with it was crap. And Microsoft has really worked on that. And now it's recognized as one of the best in the industry.
Which is, I think it's Defender or something, isn't it?
It's Windows Defender. Yeah, okay. It's all Windows Defender.
I'm good there.
And you're good there. But, people, if they're running a Mac, they think they're not vulnerable. And that's just not true. That is sadly not true. And in fact, if anything, I suspect that the vulnerability there might be even greater, because the culture or the perception has always been, I have a Mac, we're special. The hackers don't want to bother us. Like, even within the company, Apple Computers, there's a culture of thinking there's not a risk. And I had really unbelievable thing that happened. We got, we get the notices of all the attacks that are in the wild right now. And so there was one that it was going specifically after Mac. And I have someone in my family that works for Apple Computers. And I thought, I got to share that with this person immediately. They probably already know. Like, Apple would have notified them to let them know that this is a common attack. Didn't happen. So through their own company, they're not getting the information. And this is someone who works directly for Apple Computers. Wow. So there is definitely a risk there. So get some antivirus for Mac for sure. And with antivirus too, antivirus is all about all the existing attacks that we already know exist. It's just a big database, and just think of it like a big protector shield that's out there in front of you, deflecting all the arrows that are coming at you with all the stuff that we already know exists. But there's 40,000 brand new attacks that are created every single day that antivirus has never seen it before. So until it gets added to the global database, antivirus isn't really, an option. It's not going to help. It's still needed. You have to have it, but it can't protect you from everything that can happen. There are some options for the small and medium-sized business that are not very expensive, and I could provide details at a separate conversation if anybody wants to know that. But definitely antivirus for sure. Have a tech person, a trusted resource that's going to help you scan your machine. Consider a monitoring service, especially if you're in a business where you're connected to a larger company, because you're providing a service for a larger company, let's say. If your security is not tight, now you're risking that larger customer of yours, right? So that's really, really important. A lot of people now with the pandemic and working from home, it's been able to create a workforce of consultants that can work from home, that can work anywhere in the world, because larger companies now have a much, much higher threshold for accepting that they'll have service delivery, and it doesn't matter where it comes from. It doesn't have to be from an employee sitting in the office anymore, right? So we're seeing a lot more professionals in healthcare and engineering, that were maybe at one time really confined to the employee-employer model and working in an office. Well, now those people, because we all agree we can work from anywhere, they're hanging up a shingle. I'm like, Bobby Joe consultant, and I can work for anybody in the world. So they're providing high-level services for large customers, right?
Yeah.
But they themselves can be a risk for that larger company. And so they can't think of themselves as, I'm just going to do my service without adding some cybersecurity, right? And they can even use it as a selling point, right?
Absolutely. And even in some of those, there's like collaboration. I think it's like called Slack or whatever. We can collaborate. Like I'm going in and you're going in and we're sharing stuff. Like, if you know what I mean, like we're relying on that online service provider to keep our data secure, right? And if you know what I mean. So, if we don't have good solid passwords and all that kind of stuff, then
right,
there's just so many. There's so many holes out there.
And it's just to kind of like educate yourself. The information is out there, but just question and do your research on Google. The information is already available. The biggest thing is to plant that seed of understanding. Where is the risk with this particular activity? What can I do to protect myself? Like the Google ecosystem is something that I think a lot of people have embraced. I personally have. I love it. I love all the Google apps, but something to think about. And I have a free account. That data is held in the US. And so if there was ever any kind of investigation, all of that is going to fall under US laws. So I don't have the same protection as I would if I was paying for a Canadian company that is housing my data, right? So there's a country of residence or for your data. That's an issue. And if you're in a business where you have to provide privacy or privacy protection, that's something that you have to think about. If you're using free tools, they are relatively safe, but they fall under the jurisdiction of another country with different laws from ours. So every single tool that you use as a self-employed person, you have to ask the question and really understand.
That brings up another question that I have. So let's just say I have an account with, I don't know, hotel chain, username, password. It's been there. They're my preferred people, whatever, when I travel or whatever, or it could be anywhere. But let's say they got hacked, okay? And all their data was harvested, including my name, my password, my address, everything. Does that company have to go public and say that I was hacked? Like, is there a law and do they do it? Like, would they send me like, what's the process there to say, hey, Doug, your name and your information's now out there because we got hacked?
I'm pretty sure the law in Canada is that you are required to report. And there's an online resource, cyber.gc.ca. A lot of information and resources there, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm really not 100% sure. I'd have to find out and get back to you on this. In Canada, yes, but in other parts of the world, no. And that's absolutely true, and that's what happens. And that's why cybersecurity is something that we don't recognize the risk, because companies want to protect their image. They don't want to tell that they've been hacked, right? Because that's not good for them. That's not good for business. So that's a big problem. And one of the schools of thought around the whole issue and the risk is that we need to be more like the hackers, because the hackers are out there saying, hey, I tried this and it worked. Or they're saying, hey, I tried this and I got stuck at this point. And somebody else jumps in and goes, oh yeah, that happened to me, do this. Because we need to be doing this on the other end, going, oh, I got hacked. We need to take the shame off of it, right? And so that we can share and improve. Like, that is a thing that is really hurting and causing more risk, because people are feeling like, oh, this isn't good for business. I don't want to tell people I got hacked.
Like me saying I had 21 and that you've been pawned. Come on, anybody gonna beat me on 21?
That's a lot. I did mine and I had 3.
Yeah.
So
I had 21 and it was like, and that was on one email address. I think the other one was, I think that was 3 or 4, but I've only got that email address for like a year or so since I moved to Halifax. Wow. So,
wow. Those are recent.
I'm out there, right? So, but I mean, but you know what my password was. You could probably guess every one of those accounts. Like you could probably be sitting there reading my emails on the web browser and seeing what I'm saying and who I'm talking to. Like they could have just been watching and waiting to pounce, right?
Yes.
It's scary.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, but yes.
All right. So Kathy is asking, what about HIPAA compliance? Do you know what that is?
HIPAA compliance. It's a privacy compliance standard that is really big in the U.S. It is making its way to Canada. We're not quite there yet. And that is around a set of privacy guidelines to protect healthcare information. And healthcare, for a hacker, the highest value data record is a healthcare record.
Really?
So yeah, it's the biggest return on investment for them when they go hacking. That's the juicy stuff that they really want.
What makes it juicy?
So insurance, really, I'd have to do a little bit more research.
Just spiders out into more places.
So why? Yeah, exactly. But it is definitely a stat that it's the most valuable a bit of information that a hacker can go after. Yeah. And, if you look at our healthcare investments, like a lot of hospitals, they're still running IT equipment from 10 years ago. Thankfully, a lot of it is not connected to the internet. A lot of it is just standalone systems. So the risk is very, very low. So I don't know if that answers Kathy's question, but that's what HIPAA is related to.
Let us know, Kathy. It was funny because, not funny, but I remember when I worked in Dartmouth, like I was in New Brunswick 16. It was over 20 years ago. We had a server there, and I remember our IT guy at the time. I don't know if it was the processing, like it just seemed to be running a lot of in the background. And I don't know if he found it or they brought a consultant in, but there was a porn site run on the server. So somehow they went, I mean, back then probably, but they were hosting it. All the file videos were there and they were directing the IP address and they were running a website, a porn site off our company's server in the background. And it had been going on for a long time.
Yeah. So resource hacking, right? So people want to do these illegal activities and they don't, it's like people growing pot on somebody else's land.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of rationale. And so some of the resources, they're hacking and stealing your computing power and your electricity so that they're not paying for it. And so that's the type of malware attack where they don't want to get found. They're very, very careful to not give any overt clues. So you just might all of a sudden think, gee, my computer's acting kind of slow. But we don't think a lot of that because that tends to happen a lot, especially with Windows computers anyway, and especially over time, right? But it could be that there could be some malware running in the background that's using your resources. Yeah, and you'd have to do some further investigation to see if that's happening. And there are tools to look into that if people ever wanted to.
Okay, so I got one more question here. So Google Drive. So I'm keeping all my files on a Microsoft Drive. Okay, not on my laptop. So if I go on my computer, it goes right out to how safe is that? Like, do I need to back up the backup? I guess it's the cloud, but if it's Microsoft has that saved on a drive or talk to me about that.
If you look at their SLAs, their service level agreements, they make no promise that is going to be, 100% reliable. I think backups are good practice if you keep your data on the cloud or if you keep it, on your local computer. You should always have a backup of everything if it's valuable. If you don't care about it, it doesn't matter. If I'm writing some kind of draft letter that's a one-time thing, I could care less, And I think a lot of us we've turned into data hoarders, Our email inboxes have got 10 years of email. We don't need that anymore, right?
I got 2 external hard drives, man. I can go back 12, 13 years of stuff.
Yeah. So
actually, I can go back. Actually, I can go back to 1999 and 2000. I can pull out stuff from back then. So
I think that's a fun way to think about it. You know, we're hoarding too much data that we don't really need, but backups are important. And the likelihood of these systems going down or being hacked, I think, are low. However, it's always a risk, and part of the overall conversation that you have to ask yourself: what if? You know, are you ready? And so, disaster recovery planning is as much a part about this whole conversation as anything else.
Yeah.
Because we in our industry, we say there's two kinds of people. There's the ones that have been hacked and the ones who have and just don't know about it yet.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, that's a kind of a scary way to think of it as well. But given that a lot of the attacks that happen, they don't want you to know that they've infiltrated your information. It's probably pretty accurate.
They just get in, get out, and then they move on at some point in time.
Or they get in and they hang around, because they want to keep learning about you. The more they learn and find, the more they can do.
It's like a tick. It just keeps sucking the blood out of you, right?
Right. You know, like we installed our security agent for a customer 3 months ago. And on day one, when we installed our solution, we found a keylogger that had been sitting there for 5 months. Like, that's the kind of stuff that malware, they don't want you to know that they're there. So a
keylogger is when I'm sitting here typing, they're actually seeing what, like they're sending them.
They're collecting a data log of everything that gets typed on the keyboard.
Right. And that could be company wide, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, that's one way that they get passwords and accounts, but that's how they get credit card information.
Wow.
That's the big one, right? So if you're a small business and you're collecting credit card information, what are you doing with that? Where are you keeping it, right? You've got to have a duty of care to that person you've collected the credit card from.
Yeah.
So you need to have a system in place that is protecting that person and yourself too, because you know you don't want to be responsible for having something happen to someone's credit card because you didn't handle the information properly.
Yeah, it's just like when you're at a restaurant, you hand your credit card to the waiter or waitress, and they go into the back room to do and then they come back out. Right?
Yeah, like,
I've done that. I said to them, like, you know, I said, bring the machine here, like, or I'll go with you, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, especially if you're traveling and you're in a strange place, right? Like, you don't know what's going to happen.
You have no idea. That's right. Exactly. That works when everybody's honest, but not everybody's honest.
All right. We're almost at an hour now. This has been like, we could talk for hours on this subject.
I thought our call was supposed to be 30 minutes.
Yeah, it was, but we were just, I'm asking a lot of questions because I'm learning, right? So it's not like I'm guiding the conversation here. I'm just self-serving myself, trying to educate, but hopefully everyone in the group's getting value from this. And, you know, I
hope so. And if anyone wanted to connect with me after this for anything, they'd be more than welcome. You can share my contact info with your group.
Well, and you're in the group, so you guys can send her a friend request or send her a private message or whatever you want. So
for sure.
That was awesome. I don't know if you have any parting words, any last minute of encouragement. I know people are probably going, I'm tired of Doug talking about taxes. Now they're bringing in cybersecurity.
I think really, you know, solutions are out there. I think awareness is the biggest part. You can't protect yourself from something that you don't know exists. And so just to have a security mindset is really the key takeaway. And quite honestly too, folks, just share the conversation with everyone in your group, with your family, you know, with your kids, with your parents, all of it. We need that to be happening. And with that, we'll make headway.
It's true, because I sent the email out to my kids, like they were in other parts of Canada, and my oldest, Alyssa, she emailed me back. She goes, she sent me a screenshot of my email to them on a Facebook Messenger and said, "Is this a scam?" As soon as we call it cybersecurity, I just thought, okay, is it maybe my dad got hacked or something, right? I was like, no, it's true. So, she's doing the password hygiene process now.
Right, exactly. So kids are growing up with it, right? Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. So that would be really my parting words. It's just to make it part of what you're thinking about, the way that you approach interacting with technology. You know, where could there be risks? What do I do? Nothing's free.
No, it's not. All right. Well, thank you very much. It's been awesome. And I'm sure everyone's going to get some value from this. So, and
well, thanks a lot,
you're in the
Doug.
group. So if there's any questions, we'll keep an eye on the chat and we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Angela.
It was fun.
See you, everybody.
Bye.